So when parents apply to our school, they often say they would like their child to be a good human being by the end of the journey, at the end of the road, and that's a very fascinating topic because in our educational context, yeah, it's loaded with the term good student, good human being. So let's unpack that and look at different facets of the notion of goodness.
Yeah, but just before we begin, I'm wondering, in this very contemporary age, goodness seems like a very old-fashioned topic, right? Like, it seems a bit like old-fashioned to talk about goodness. We can discuss more specific things like kindness or generosity or empathy or something. Goodness seems like an abstract layer we are adding onto real life. And also, I mean, in discussion with people, we often hear the idea that, good and bad are just relative human concepts, right? Nothing in nature that is good or bad. Somehow the specific goodness topic brings out this masala feeling of, oh, it is all relative, and there's nothing really concrete about it. So it's paradoxical. I feel we ought to discuss it, and I also feel there may be some question around it. But at the same time, I feel it's a felt need from parents and educators. Like, I can't imagine a parent saying, it's okay for my child to grow up and be destructive to others or to herself or whatever. So, it is a real felt need, I think, and for that reason, we can go into it.
You said that it's old fashioned and maybe it's even a concept, but I'm wondering if we can stay with that question for a while. Because after all, many cultures, through the ages have been interested in a philosophical investigation, looking at goodness together. And like Kirti said, when parents write to us, I too wonder what they mean when they say, I want my child to just be a good human being. Be interesting to stay with that for a while and go into it, right? Yeah.
So one thing might be
It's
when
all
parents or
silent.
even educators say good human being, they might mean we want the child to have the right values, like
Is
we want to
anybody
be
talking?
respectful to elders, or be hardworking, be polite, be honest. And this has to do with the sense of social morality that we are all growing up with. So that could be one place to start.
Yeah, also like a good political citizen. So in your
No,
country, you
I
are
can't hear
a critical
anything. This is
thinker.
Bakchi.
You have
No
liberal
sound is coming.
views. You're a responsible citizen. It would also add that layer, no? Yeah.
Or being successful, being respectable in society, or having the feeling of giving back to society. And I'm just thinking, even in our school, we may all have a certain picture of what a good CFL student is, right? Somebody who's looking out for the others and not just themselves, who's participating in community tasks involved in the community, being responsible. And all of these may be in some way tied to certain values that we hold as a people.
So as we're going around, we're listing properties and habits of goodness, right? So I'm just wondering, can we ask ourselves if goodness lies elsewhere and not just in behavioral performance, in a sense that it's just a picture or a list of actions, no?
I
Yeah.
think I understand, but can you go more into it and say what you mean?
Yeah. Um, yeah, so is goodness just about cultivating properties,
Hmm.
or could it be more of an attitude or a response to the world around me? And it's ongoing. On a daily basis, I do need to take into account someone else's motivations, feelings, and then my own, and respond to it in a situation or incident. So, is it more like a process, ongoing process, like a verb almost, not a noun as a fixed entity of goodness to try to achieve? So, I mean, we're all watching how people are motivated by similar feelings and thoughts, right? So, taking all that into account and understanding why someone did what they did, then responding to that, that feels more like an appropriate response, or maybe even good in a sense. And actually, in that sense, we can't predict how my action will be. So it's not fixed actually, right? It's not a list of qualities. It could be what I do, or how I respond. Yeah.
So, Kitty, you're saying that if one is alert to what's happening inside us in some ways and paying attention to what's happening around us,
Yeah.
uh, then the actions that emerge out of that, or all that unfolds out of that, may be a way of responding to life. Is that what you're saying?
It's also an awareness of my conditioning. That's what I mean, I think.
Yeah.
That I'm, yeah. So,
So
again,
I'm
not
wondering.
looking at the outward only, but an awareness of my conditioning and then responding to life. That's what, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering what if instead of wanting to be good, it feels like we're adding another layer to something. So instead of doing that, I'm wondering if we just look at what's happening within us and stay with that. Is that of value? Because it feels like it's possible to look at what's happening in a fleeting moment, and that may in fact reduce the struggle that we seem to have with meeting a certain picture of goodness. It may reduce that.
Yeah, so it's not a narrative we tell ourselves.
I am not
If
getting
I
any
do this,
sound.
this means I'm a good human being, and this is who I am. It's not a voice like that. It's also not something we can enforce in a space like this, or a practice we can expect. Yeah, so maybe it doesn't have an evaluative quality to it at all. That's my sense.
So you're talking about an inner awareness. So that could also become part of a list that you talked about earlier. I guess I hear you were saying that it's not a part of that list because it's more dynamic and alive and in touch with what is happening. It's not one more picture or label to stick on to somebody. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. Also, there's one very strong implication from what both of you are saying, that there are no good or bad people, and there are just a series of attitudes and emotions and actions that are playing out in life, and maybe there's some awareness of these. Now, this is a bit controversial because immediately even I will feel, wait a minute, wasn't Hitler a really bad person, and wasn't Gandhi a really good person? I mean, that's how the mind formulates the problem. Yeah, so that's a very complex topic. But just to suggest that maybe we are not like solid rocks or mountains clashing into each other through life, but more like clouds or weather systems. We are drifting through life, and attitudes are drifting through us, and maybe there can be an awareness of this, is what I'm hearing both of you say.
Right.
Yeah, many philosophers have suggested this.
Yeah, and as you're saying all that, Venkat, I'm thinking of what we do here in school. So here, all the adults and children come together to talk about various aspects of our life, right? And there may be questions that we bring And when we come to it, it's with a certain curiosity to find out or to look at our thoughts and actions, to go into a certain question. There is a certain exploration that happens through conversations. So let's say we're talking about goodness in one such conversation. I think it's possible to look at it without creating in the process or at the end of it a picture that we have about uh, goodness, right? It's possible to go into it without having a picture. If I feel like if we don't do that, and if we go into that space that we have for conversations with an attitude of identifying all the features that can match my idea of goodness, then at the end of it, it's likely that I'll end up with a good versus bad list, right? And that doesn't seem to contribute to any kind of learning,
Understanding.
understanding or learning. How will we learn about it if it's already categorized? And if we look at the way we live our daily lives, if we pay attention to that, then it seems like it's not so black and white. If I think of what goodness means, and it's not so clear that this particular thing is good and this particular thing is bad. So given that it's not so black and white, coming up with a list like that or having a fixed framework also doesn't seem to make sense, right?
Yeah, it's quite complex actually. So, just for our listeners to share how in school we structure these conversations that Rupa was mentioning. Every week, each group in school has something called a dialogue class or dialogue space, and it's with their class teacher and another teacher. Yeah, so that's a space to unpack something that has happened, perhaps someone feeling hurt, um, or group habits like commenting on each other, or incidents like bullying, taking things or stealing. Yeah. Within the community, some forces are playing out, and we bring them to the dialogue space. Even students can bring something up, and in that, I guess it's an unfolding of all these factors that you said. It's not to arrive at a conclusion by the end and say, so this either this person or is bad or good, but it's more of what are the complexities that went into that situation, and then how shall we move forward. Yeah, so recently this topic of commenting on others, the need to judge others constantly, that came up from a student, and from that the next question was, what pushes each of us to comment and judge others? And slowly exposed our motivations, our fears, actually what's behind those comments. So exploration shows the depth from which we are acting every day, and it's a kind of an understanding that unfolds rather than arriving at a punishment or a conclusion of what what to consequent in a way. So
So there are clearly certain factors in the way we are set up that's allowing for an exploration of this kind, right? I can think of certain aspects that we have in our structure, like we don't have competition, we don't have rewards, punishments, we don't put children through contests that judge them and reward them for their skills or their talents. Even our sports program will not make use of competition to simply to motivate children to play. Surely this will have an impact on the way we relate with one another, the way we learn about ourselves. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There is, I mean, it's not that people here are not competitive. Students and adults are competitive. It seems to be that force, but we are not structurally reinforcing it because when we do that, I think the sense of competition kind of narrows our energies in a very, very focused way, and then we lose that capacity to relax, to step back, to look at who we are at that moment, right, and what our place is in a wider process. We lose that capacity. So I think what you said is very important. Sorry, just to jump and then we'll come back. I think, when I'm listening to us talking, we are talking a lot about open-ended exploration and all. Just a caution that culturally, intellectually now in society, I think it's quite fashionable to say, oh, everything depends on your point of view. And there's nothing real. It's all just you want to make up your point of view about goodness in this way or that way, then you should do that, and we should all respect that. I actually don't think that's what we are suggesting. There is something real to explore about the ways in which human beings function, all of us, right? There's something tangible and there's something common in all of us. So it's not just a matter of making up your own opinion in this exploration. Sorry, just to come back to that competition point, yeah, it's very important to structurally remove competition, yeah.
So just to describe what we do have, on the contrary, is a small community of only 70 students and 20 adults, and it's residential. So yeah, it's quite an intense web of working together and getting things done, tasks done. But in the middle of that, trying to understand how to be sensitive to everyone's needs in a sense and relate to each other. So that is almost like a ground for nurturing goodness or this kind of response to what's happening. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in the community, everyone knows everyone else in some way, and yeah, we have to come together in groups to maybe take care of the kitchen or waste, manage our waste on campus, for instance. Many tasks, and it makes sense to cooperate, get it done. Yeah, so it's a bubble. It's in a sense a space from which we feel certain ways of being can come. And I don't know if I'd call it goodness, but that's it. Yeah.
So it's true, Kirti, that in a small community like ours, we need to all work cooperatively so that we can function well, live together. But I'm wondering, as we go about our daily tasks, there may be many times, many instances when you can see there's a tussle between fulfilling my own individual need and that of the community. You can see how it reveals itself, and given that we are a small community, actually it's because we live together and as this is a small community, it even shows up. And I feel like there's a lot of learning that can happen just by looking at that. Because in a community, if I can see that if one is, looking out only for oneself, then the effect of that is felt by the entire community, right? It's quite visible. It's possible
Obvious, it
to
becomes
look
obvious.
at it. I'm wondering if when one is self-centered, your mind space is fully taken up by oneself, right? There's no space for anything else to come into view. It's very narrow, like you said. There's possibly no glimpse into the vastness that exists or the relatedness that exists between us, right? There's no space for that. Seems to block some kind of awareness, and what we talked about just now about responding in the moment may not be possible if it's blocking that kind of awareness, right? Now that can't actually become another goal that we're going after, that now one needs to be not self-centered. But I am curious about what happens when we preserve this energy of just looking, just observing what's unfolding.
It's a very vast and, like you said, wonderful question what you're asking. Can we human beings look at our self-centeredness? It also has a very sad and sorrowful underside, because society is based on the idea that we should all look out for ourselves, and if not ourselves, then we identify with the group and then we push for the aims of that group. And of course, there are social groups that are suffering tremendously and going through all kinds of oppression, and then to say, no, no, you must not push for your aims. I mean, that feels like terrible. But at the same time, there is something interesting in this whole question that you're opening up, that society as it is structured today, maybe because many people and groups are just pushing, and we are not able to see something bigger about relatedness, like you're saying.
Yeah, just to add, I feel like if each individual and each social group, if each of us is going after a certain ambition, going after success, and we know that success is defined in certain ways now, right? It's to do with wealth or status or the power that you hold. It's actually, we shouldn't be surprised that there's conflict
So much,
in
yeah.
the world. In fact, it may be at the root of much of the social arrangements that are in place now. It may have resulted in the kind of oppression we see or the disharmony that we see in society, right?
But yeah, so what else is there to drive us though? I mean, I'm just thinking aloud that if I'm not self-centered, how will I achieve what I need, what I want in life? How will the group achieve what it needs? And yeah, that drive may just disappear, no, if I'm not self-centered, and then I may become fearful of being a failure or just collapsing. So what else should I have? I mean, I'm just thinking it's a natural force, self-centeredness.
But that could be an assumption, right? That one will fail, one will collapse without this drive itself may be an assumption. We actually don't know what will emerge if this self-centered energy actually dissolves or it weakens in some way. We don't know what will emerge from that. Even a suggestion to question this drive may leave all of us feeling like very scared of what will become of us without this drive.
So these are all very subtle points. See, I'm just wondering, who says don't be self-centered? It's normally this thing is coming from a very traditional, like religious type context, or some very other conservative context which says, no, don't be self-centered. It's very bad to be self-centered. We should all be good human beings by not being self-centered. Right? But actually, I think now this question of and the problem of self-centeredness is actually coming up in many contexts, like scientific contexts, like what drives human beings to behave the way we do, or philosophical contexts, or social contexts, political contexts sometimes. Like it is, I think it's a question that's gathering momentum in my reading, and many philosophers are talking about this. And Krishnamurti has gone into this question a lot. So at this point, we thought we would project a slide, and I don't know if our viewers or listeners are familiar with Krishnamurti, so it's quite a dense passage. We'll just read it once slowly and project it as a slide also, so you can follow.
So the mind is ever seeking experience, and that experience hardens into a center. And from this center we act. We live and have our being in this center, in this accumulated, hardened experience of the past. And is it possible to live without forming this center of experience and sensation? Because it seems to me that life will then have a significance quite different from that which we now give it.
So, is it possible to live in this world without forming this center? I think it is possible only when there is a full awareness of life, an awareness in which there is no motive or choice but simple observation. I think you will find, if you will experiment with this and think about it a little deeply, that such awareness does not form a center around which experience and the reactions to experience can accumulate. Then the mind becomes astonishingly alive, creative. I think this is what most of us are really seeking, a state in which there is no conflict, a state of peace and serenity of mind. But this is not possible so long as the mind is the instrument of sensation and is ever demanding further sensation.
So we're saying that in our school, we don't have competition. There isn't a system of rewards and punishments. There's a lot of space for talking things, to to have dialogues, opportunities to raise questions, and these are all sensible practices in an educational environment. But still, there is no promise of a good human being, right? It's not like you take a child through this journey and at the end of it, there is this good human being.
Product.
Yeah. And all these processes, they're not like a prescription that can assure us of that goodness. So maybe what these structures do is to just help us unpack notions that we have of goodness, or even examine the framework that we have.
Yeah. So actually going back to the parents who would like a good human being at the end of the road, it seemed like a simple ask, no? But there's so much we've had to explore and can keep exploring. Yeah.
Okay, thank you all for a nice conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, so we hope that was mostly audible. And anyway, that link is available if any of you would like to watch it again. So we'll just wait now. If you have any questions or comments, you can type them in and we will try to sort of talk about them in an open-ended way and have and respond to your questions or comments. Yeah?
May I say a few words? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
As we said in a previous webinar, we don't have a backup plan if there are no questions. So
No, can you hear
Some
me?
people might be coming from, they've just
some-
watched the YouTube. So
yeah, maybe.
Can
Okay, so
I,
that says, thanks for the
can
conversation.
you hear me?
Do we engage with parents on what they mean when they say they want their child to be good? Yeah, you want to take that?
Yeah. So, yeah, when they do apply for their child, I think it's a long process. So parents apply, they respond to a set of questions we have, not just about their child, but what they think about education and life, and their questions that come to their mind about life, their lives. So part of that is also this conversation about what do they mean, and we find that many of them write the same thing, maybe in different ways, but they're implying something about certain value systems or certain moral code. So it is a time when we unpack all that to understand how we are saying it and how they are saying it, because we'll be working together. Yeah. Speak.
Can you hear anything? Because
He says yes.
okay. Yeah, just to add, I mean, notions about, say, societal responsibility, environmental responsibility, living a simple life. These are typically what come up in this notion of the good human being.
I think many of them have questions about freedom and discipline and things like that, which may feed into this idea of being good. So I think it's also a time when we open up that and talk about it.
Louder.
Sometimes parents see features of the school, even visitors, like the way the simple buildings or the assembly hall, the natural surroundings.
Living in harmony with nature.
Yeah, so those certain phrases are ascribed to it, which is understandable. But yeah, then we do engage in a conversation and say, we're actually not about those features only. It's we could be a group together where these questions will still be the same. So yeah, a lot of teasing out what the ideas are.
Can you hear me? Can I say something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Bagchi speaking from Calcutta. I'm 90 plus, and we have a more or less like an orphanage where 91 tribal children live. In one exploration drive, the books normally give, say, germination. So they give one seed and how it grows. So to make them explore how different kind of things grow, so we took 4 different kinds of seeds. Normally, in all books of India, it's only one seed which is given and how it grows. But we explored, our children explored how different kinds of seeds they grow and and how they grow. So we put a small cup with earth and then put 4 different kinds of seeds in the 4 small holes made by your finger, made by the finger. And they start observing how 4 different kinds of things, seeds grow. And from that, the teacher, she explores and tells that how in nature, all different kinds of living things, they grow. The animals, say from the small insects, and so how in nature all different kinds of things grow in a different way. How a human child from fetus to a full man, how it grows. So this is one of the type of exploration that our children there they have. I just wanted to share some experience in our school, in our home.
Thank you for that.
It's another question.
So there's a question from Asha. Why is this question asked in the first place? What do you want for your child? What do you want your child to become? In what context are these questions relevant? Yeah, you want to take that?
Yeah, it is asked in the educational world because in some sense we are working together to bring up a child or help shape their life. I mean, in general, I think it gets synonymous education with
the future.
Yeah, the future.
Or the aspiration.
Yeah. And it includes not just the studies or the activities that children are exposed to, but also who they become. So it seems to be around in all these educational spaces. And for us in CFL, it's really important to begin the admission process or the journey with parents actually with these questions on the table, because we're all working together to bring up the children. So it's very relevant what each of us would like to see happen, or what are our ongoing engaging questions with our children. It shouldn't be 2 different worlds that the child experiences. Yeah.
I also think, I get the spirit of the question that asking this question itself provokes certain responses from parents and educators. So you're questioning the question in a way. Yeah, I think I understand that. But also, there are aspirations for children, and they may be very subtle, or they may be very focused and very well set. So it's good to bring those out in all of us, either as educators or as parents, not to act on them and then not to say, well, okay, fine, we'll make sure this happens or that happens, not like that, but just to even to acknowledge that there are aspirations, there are fantasies and dreams about what the children can become. And it's very good to even acknowledge that at the first step, I think. So,
No, I was just thinking that there may also be many assumptions around it. The fact that we are in a school where there's a lot of nature, the fact that it's friendly people, there are no system of rewards and punishments. There may be assumptions that this will automatically translate into a certain being. And it's good to clarify those and bring it to the fore and talk about it with parents. Yeah.
Can I read the next one?
Yeah.
Yeah. How important is it to nurture goodness, to give children opportunities to care for someone or something? Does fostering the active role in caring? Does your school promote the creation of these opportunities to care?
Where did you go?
Yeah, definitely just the way we live together on campus is in certain hostel areas which are not dorms so much as homes with teachers living there as well. So there's a kind of implicit understanding that we're all caring for that space or each other or someone who's ill and so on and so forth. That's one I can think of.
No, there are many such opportunities, but for instance, so there are dogs, they have to be taken care of. There are plants that need to be watered. There is a vegetable patch that must be weeded. But it is a bit of a mystery, I must say, that, why some minds gravitate towards care and why some minds may resist care, or even in the same mind, it may fluctuate between the two. So you cannot say that providing, I'm not able to say that, we have a lot of opportunities, but how each individual, engages with that in response, or how even the same individual may kind of fluctuate in response, that's quite interesting. And it's a bit of a mystery, I would say. Don't fully know what causal factors are there. It's a bit complicated. Sorry.
So just having these opportunities doesn't guarantee a certain outcome. I think that's what we notice. Yeah.
They're very nice questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
They sort of touch the heart of what we are all trying to do together.
Sorry, can I say something? Yeah, my name is Panchapakeshan. I'm speaking from Delhi. Unfortunately, I tuned in about 15 minutes late, so I didn't quite catch your main preface with which you want questions to be asked. As I understand it, it is J. Krishnamurti saying that the center of a human being should not be allowed to be powerful, and you shouldn't depend on sensations and reactions to it. But I've also read some Krishnamurti. The topic of this webinar is how a child should become a good human being. So are you people implying that a good human being is a person who does not have this center? Because I believe every person must have a center which is part of his worldview. But certainly J. Krishnamurti says that you should not worry about the past or the future. You should live in the present, and you shouldn't live about the experiences. But is your topic going to cover something like how you hope to impart this Krishnamurti's idea to a child, or are you just leaving it at a philosophical stage and leaving everything else to the person to work out?
No, so yeah, you've raised many interesting points. It's just that when we had that recorded conversation earlier, which we were playing, which we'll send the link again, and you could watch that if you're interested. It's just a way of opening up this question: what is a good human being? What are different ways of trying to understand that? That was the whole point of it, and also how to encourage such an exploration in an educational context like our school. So that was the broad thing. I don't know whether we are saying here is the prescription and this is the way to do it. There is some problem with that approach, even, which I think you mean because you've read Krishnamurti, there is some philosophical problem with that approach. Here is the prescription and this is the way to do it. I guess these webinars are a way of opening up some question and starting some kind of conversation amongst people who are interested in it. And also you touched upon something that we are also a bit worried about, that not everything is so open-ended that everyone can just decide what they want about it. There might actually be some real discoveries to make about consciousness or self-centeredness or goodness or action or education or any of these very, very broad themes. The suggestion is there may be something real we can all discover together. So yeah, thank you for that. So we've just sent you the link again. You could, if you missed the first part and if you are interested, you can see that video.
Seeing something.
No. If I see that video and come back, will the discussion be waiting for that? Or I would rather see the link and the video after this thing is over. But I wanted to also raise the question that one of the main problems we have in education is giving value education so that people know what they are in the world for and how they have to behave. And recently I was very impressed by the system of education introduced in Delhi by the AAP government, which they follow the philosophy of a person called Acharya Nagaraj. You might have heard of it. He has a complete system of Jivan Vidya, something like a detailed curriculum for the education. He was also a person like Krishnamurti, who was enlightened and all that. And he says, and I think most other people also say, that main idea is the person to develop a confidence to make a decision on his own, listen to others, and then decide. And also at the same time, it is necessary that some of the broader prospects of life principle, like there should be competition and not cooperation, that there should be restriction of your wants because the number of things available are not infinite. So this is Adam Smith and other people saying like that. And these are the type of things that have to be countered in the education so that people are free. And in Delhi, they also started a happiness class in which they have a meditation as part of the program for a short time. And then they discuss a story and various points of view. They say that they don't impose righteousness, but I don't know how far that goes. So I just wondered if you people are driving towards something like that. I think I have already spoken for a lot of time. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think to begin with we are starting with a counter approach. I feel like we are going in with a certain curiosity about how the self plays out in life, and so it's not so we're not addressing it as a in terms of specific, to say that, okay, this is happening, so we'll meet it. For example, you talked about wants. So we may question the idea of wants even without feeling that those wants may not be met. At a very basic level, what are the movements we feel within us? What is the nature of a psychological mind? How does that play out in relationships? So it is more at the level of curiosity than to fix something and say at the end of it, I want this, because the rest of imparting certain strategies or certain ways of looking at things, it's not even about giving another perspective. I feel it's to pause and maybe think about and reflect. I don't know if I've answered your question, but yeah, it's not a counter approach. You want to add anything?
Yeah, also
Thank you.
yeah. The word values, we keep re-exploring together.
Okay.
Sorry. Just can the child himself or herself kind of come upon something as a response that would make sense in a situation, so that it's not external, like I should have done this or I should do this, but more by seeing what's happening in front of them, somebody else's feelings of hurt, and then they respond. So yeah, in myself too, I've thought of when a child says sorry, there's something valuable about it, almost like a template. But nowadays that I don't really look for the sorry. It's more what are they feeling and thinking while they talk to someone else. So it's interesting. Even ourselves, we are moving from our own pictures of values to evolve to something else. That's been interesting, yeah. We had another one.
Clarify if this is from the child's point of view.
So Ravi is asking a question. Can we also please discuss this question from a school institution perspective? I just want my school to be a good school. So I think you mean like the people who are running the school want it to be a good school, right? That's how I'm understanding this from a school perspective. Yes, okay. You want to take that? Or?
Just thinking.
Yeah, well, I mean, what do we mean? I think you're asking, what do we mean when we say we want to be a good school? Or
are we saying that?
Okay, Ravi, I'm going to ask you to just clarify your question a little bit because I'm blank. You can come on audio, you can.
Okay, thanks, Venku.
Yeah.
I actually even thought about it from a parent perspective, not even only from a school. Like when parents come to school, and ask questions, and they come and say, "I want my child to be a good human being."
Right.
When I want to find out how is the school approaching this, as in how is the school saying that? Look, we are looking at, of course, academics and curricula and all that, but we are just looking at how do we, from a systems perspective, ensure that we are working towards this together. It's more from that angle, and I'm sorry if my question was not.
No. I had too many interpretations of it. That's why I was blanking. Which line to follow.
May I react on this question? May I react on this question? You see, in Calcutta, we have a school where the street children, they come and they are being taught by the children who come to the normal school. So from 8 o'clock in the morning, when the bell rings, a child from class 6 to 12 says, it's all in routine. Say one section student go up into the roof where there is a rainbow school, where these street children, they come, and a child takes a child 1-to-1 ratio, and the child teaches this child, and thereby an empathetic relationship grows up between a downward a child which is very poor and these children who are coming from middle class or upper middle class families. Now these children go to the village every Thursday. A bus takes these children to say 30 or 40 kilometers away, and these children go down in groups to primary schools in the villages and teach the children at the local school. So when they go, say, walk this distance, they see how the people in the village they live, what they grow, and all these experiences that the child has. They, in the end of the year, they have an exhibition of science experiments exhibition in the village, where these children also take part from the school. So this is the way how, say, empathic relation, understanding of a village life, how the education goes in a village primary school. When they are teaching, the teachers are all outside the school taking tea or reading newspaper. Uh, the way these children teach is a different way than in the normal school. So the normal teachers, they should be there, but they're not there. They're outside. So these are the experience of the teachers, that how things go on in the schools and how it should be done in a school. Okay.
Thank you. So one response, Ravi, I mean, we could say that the structures or the features of the school should be good. I mean, there should be a good games field, there should be a good chemistry lab and so on. And that's like one aspires for those things. But, the way in which I get your question is that, what kinds of questions are we asking ourselves, both as educators, as parents, and potentially as students as well, about the nature of the learning process, or about the nature of our whatever aspect of our lives is coming to the fore at that point, right? So, and that is actually quite difficult to do, but for me, that is what is coming forth first, in the sense, there are many things that are taken for granted about schooling or about the ends to which children are being groomed towards. So, what kinds of questions and with what quality? Because we have to ask, it has to be quite sharp and deep at the correct moment. And that is quite difficult to do, actually, unless we are also very alert to what is happening both within us, in the students, in the families, in the school environment as a whole. Which leads rather nicely to the next question from Siddharth. Hello, where the chat. Yeah, so Siddharth has asked, goodness as a verb rather than a noun. I found that very interesting. Process rather than end product. But it's quite challenging to engage in a process without an end result in mind. Are there any techniques to bring this about? So that's the first question. He's asked a couple more. But you want to say, engage in a process without an end result in mind. I mean, one thing that comes to my mind is I read this very moving and book about, a mother who is given, she's had a child, and then discovers that that child has a very rare genetic disease, and child is going to die in 3 years or so. So then she asks, what is the nature of parenting for such a child? This child has no future in the conventional sense. She looks around and she sees other parents bringing up their children, giving them alphabet books or giving them, whatever, so to help them become somebody in the future. And then she makes a rather nice statement that all children need to be loved and looked after in the present, whatever their skills and their capacity. I found that quite moving. I don't know whether it addresses this exactly, but
Can I just add?
Engage in a process. Yeah.
No, just one thing I thought of is that while I'm working with children, I find that the end is often there. The end goes away. And when I say end, I probably mean like a change in behavior or something that I feel is inappropriate in a child. There is, I think, some tendency to correct that keeps coming up. And I'm calling that end. That does come. I mean, that is there for us to see every day in my everyday interactions with children. I do find myself wanting that change, and it's important to pause at that time and just where it's coming from, or to relax about it, or to see what unfolds. Because a lot of times I find myself maybe reacting even before something has emerged in the child. There may be an anticipation of a certain behavior. I mean, there's so many things that I can put into what you're saying end product. And it does come up for us to see.
To see Kitty.
Yeah. No, I was reading on to the next thing. Is it okay?
Yeah, please.
Is it more about the teacher's quality of being? And I would say it's definitely been a lot about that in our discussions as teachers together, because we do have images about children. We do kind of mark certain behaviors as good and bad, but that's not how we can view a dynamic human being who's growing up in school. So yeah, it's been a very powerful and valuable process to unpack our own ideas of what is goodness on the CFL campus. And yeah, I mean, same child can move through within a day through so many different states of being. How can I say that they have become good or are good or all? I mean, it just goes out of the window. So yeah, it's been more valuable to kind of work with them through the different things that come at them in a day. And then, yeah, and it's not predictable, right? Like this response to in this conflict will be the same a few days from now. May not be. And yet both had a quality of warmth to them or something good about it. So it's quite interesting. I can't predict what will happen. Yeah.
And the final question was, if one isn't able to put aside the notion of goodness as something to target, does that invalidate what we're doing? What do you think? So that doesn't invalidate what we're doing?
No, I don't think so. But these things are subtle, isn't it? I mean, to work through a process and not be concerned with where it's headed or with what its purposes might be. And yet, when you spoke about during your recorded conversation about a quality of awareness, which it seemed to me was where you arrived at as being the basis for this whole movement. To hold that awareness without worrying about what might come out of it.
Yeah.
I think that's the challenge that I face.
Yeah. Okay, Preeti is asking, isn't there an inherent notion of goodness? That is why we get kids to explore and talk about it. Yeah.
In terms of actions.
No notion of goodness. No, I think that's the heart of the problem. We have an idea of goodness, and then we try to actualize that idea, and that entangles us in knots.
Yeah.
And then we get fed up with the whole thing and say, oh, there's no such thing, goodness, it's all just, human constructs and so. So we need to swing between these two. But I think what Krishnamurti is suggesting is interesting, that there is a way of being in the world without being knotted up in oneself. And that may not be a notion or an idea. It may be a way of being. It's not a notion or an idea. But how do we talk about that? Very difficult. How do we, it's another webinar waiting to happen. We have often been seeing through these webinars.
So Preeti, did you mean like almost inherent in us biologically, or did you mean society sort of produces it? Because on the societal level, definitely there are all kinds of frameworks and prisons and so on and so forth. So yeah.
think she's typing. Inherently.
Okay, like
Mhm.
Like an
instinct,
instinct.
yeah.
Like an instinct.
Okay.
Oh.
The only thing is, what picture will it bring up? Because goodness could mean in some community not allowing a stranger in, or I mean, it's so complicated. Goodness could be just going back to my own bloodlines and my family and not letting someone else in.
Mm.
But then that's not for someone else. I don't know, it's so complicated. I don't know.
Yeah. Just to say, the earlier two webinars were more, one was about what is child-centered education, and the other one was about, talking with young people. Pedagogically, from a teacher point of view, there's a lot to explore in those, right? Like notions of child-centeredness. This is deliberately a rather more fuzzy theme or abstract theme. And we chose it because it keeps coming up that this wanting education to produce a good human being. It's like a very deeply felt need. What is the school supposed to do about it? Not completely clear, but it's a fascinating idea, but difficult to talk about. Also because so much has been written and thought about it through human history. Everyone is opinionating madly about it. So should we wind up then? If there are... So one thing is, we have an email ID. It's info@cfl.in. Shall I?
Yes.
Sachin, do you mind sending that? So if any, from past webinars, one or two people have sent us some questions and we have responded through email. May take a little time, but we will eventually respond. So if you have any thoughts or questions, you can just send us an email and we can respond to it. Yeah, so as I said in the beginning, we have recorded this whole session and we'll upload it on YouTube and send you all the link. And the earlier ones are also uploaded along with, not only the recorded conversation, but also the question and answers.
I just wanted to say something.
Yeah.
So when I think of not about goodness, but what matters in life for any being is not something that my father reminded me about. He said it's not about what you do, but about how you are. And how you are is a whole gamut of things. And so one chance that we have in school, because I'm also part of Center for Learning, because we do live together, is if we have a chance to relate, to work through problems, to encounter all aspects of ourselves together. And this is a continual process of learning and living. So it's not so much caught up with how to ensure goodness even in any of us or any of our children, but to work at learning to live together.
Mm. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
We'll end now. Thanks. We'll
Oh,
yeah,
you're sharing.
there is some links that Sachin will share now. Just give it a minute. About the school and yeah. Yeah, we'll leave this on for a while. Okay, thank you all. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Still open.
Okay.